Good day, everybody. How's it going out there? You'll notice I'm not really wearing a suit today, and because today's topic is a little bit more down to earth. It's a little bit more grungy, as it were. Today we're going to be talking about mosh pits. I have zero experience with such things, so you're going to learn at the same time I do, probably. But the mosh scene is a very important scene. It's a scene where people express their rage in sort of a very tribal dance sort of thing, maybe. I don't know. But basically it's hard rock, hard metal, and the crowd just basically, they do this sort of like aggressive romping, as it were. Similar to how when animals come out of the womb of their forebears, they learn to romp and play and basically wrestle with each other, right? They learn to do that, and it's a way of play. It's a way of expression, right? And so, as you grow older, though, that romping and that playing evolves into sort of the conceptualization of violence, or utilizing violence as a means of control, sort of like, animals will kill other animals, right? That wrestling that the predators learned when they were young becomes a pouncing of a gazelle to kill the gazelle to feed the family. So the sort of romp and play becomes a skill that the adult uses in order to do that. And violence is very similar when it comes to human endeavor. When you're a young kid, you'll romp around and like play with other kids. But as you grow older, that sort of wrestling or that sort of physicality is usually seen as you don't want to interact with that physicality unless you are protecting something or defending somebody, or, that. But there are adults, similar to adults who enjoy animal costumes and animal characters even when they grow older. There are adults who enjoy the romp and the rugger of the sort of vigorous wrestling and interaction in their adult lives. And the manifestation of that are things like wrestling, boxing, and mosh pits, right? So to me, it sort of has that similar keel to it. And there's some people that wasn't an important thing. It's like, well, when they see romps and violence and kill and language like that, they get a little like wary, right? So they won't involve themselves in crowds like that. Certainly not my big thing, but it's sort of, when you understand it at that sort of appeal and that sort of visceral level, you can kind of understand it as a form of expression. And just like any other forms of expression, there are rules and things like that. So what does this have to do with furries? Well, there was a furry in a mosh pit in Houston, Texas, on October 15th. And they were at a mosh concert, and it didn't go too well for them, unfortunately. The furry suitor's name was Latte, and they found themselves in a viral video as of sorts. It went viral at first because people saw as, oh man, this is so interesting and weird and cool, but it evolved into something a little different, because what ended up happening is that the situation was a bit more serious than the video made it first appear. And so we're gonna go and watch this video now. Now, this video is not, I would say on the disturbing scale. I mean, I've seen disturbing videos, obviously, in nonfiction consumption. I would say it's probably even like a low 3 on the scale of 1 to 10, because of how a fursuit impacts the impact of violence. And we'll kind of go over that a little bit. But basically, so here's the video here. This was actually retweeted by From Joy, and From Joy said, so this was originally posted by Return to Pluto, who was like, dog, this is funny as hell. And From Joy responds that From Joy is for the furries. So this post was made at about 5:15. So this was retweeted by the band. The hardcore metal band that was playing was From Joy at that Houston facility. So here's the video. So as you can see, there the band's. We start with the band playing on the stage, and the camera pans to the crowd. So I'm kind of describing this for people who are audio listeners. It pans to the crowd, so it's a red room. The crowd is sort of in an opposite corner from the cameraman, and there is a distance between the crowd, the main mosh crowd, and the fursuiter, and it looks like a separate crowd of people. The person who ended up punching the furry with a haymaker, very, very strong haymaker punch, seems to come out of the crowd, but it's about, I would say, 4 or 5 body lengths from the crowd to the fursuiter. So, there was a article by a mosh sort of hardcore metal news organization that called this crowd killing, and we'll go over what that means in a bit. But here we have this mosher who's kind of stumbling out of the crowd a bit, but moving about 2 or 3 body lengths towards the fursuiter. Now, they're kind of flailing their body around, and they start by kicking a person who seems to be like in front of the stage in that open area, and basically he starts to spin his body around, and then bam, right there. So he takes his fist, his entire elbow, he basically hits the furry under the left side of their face, about right under the eye socket, I would say. And the fursuit, it yanks the fursuiter's face. The fursuiter's face like turns to the right and over their shoulder, and the fursuiter stumbles back. The guy who threw the punch stumbles forward against the fursuiter a bit, then stumbles a bit to his right, and someone else in the crowd like catches this and sort of pushes the crowd killing mosher back towards the mosh area, the main area, and then the video ends. So basically, you know, so that's the video of the situation. Now, from somebody who, I'm not a mosher myself, somebody seeing this as just a general furry, you know, obviously you're concerned for the health of the person. As a furry, like, I know that fursuits are not fully designed to take body blows like that. So, you know, and it depends on the design of the fursuit too. So, like, this fursuit, for instance, definitely would not survive a mosh pit. Like, I got booped pretty good at one MFF, and it actually pushed the nose into my nose, right? So it pushed the nose into my glasses and things like that. So if someone puts a pressure right here, it actually pushes sort of the mesh. There's sort of a underlying mesh thing that kind of keeps the head in form. And if somebody were to punch me like that, then the plastic of that mesh would basically make my eye look like a pancake, probably. Like, it looked like a waffle iron smacked me in the face, probably. So, you know, but if someone were to do a good punch to my face, on a video, you're not going to see any of the internal damage, because these things do have give. Like, I can put this thing in like a bag and it can actually unfold and fold. So it does have a lot of give to it. But if someone were to punch me in the face, my actual face on the inside of this would absolutely take damage. So that's the thing about fursuits, is that most of them, if you're talking about a base design, probably not designed to take punishment from a mosh pit like that. If you are planning to have your character be a person who is in high interaction in situations like that and things like that, it might be something you want to tell your fursuit designer, so that way, you know, your fursuit does have that give, or can take like a blow like that without taking too much damage. Unfortunately, though, the fursuiter in this case did take damage. Just as I said earlier, like, if someone were to punch this in the face, I'd probably take some face damage. Fursuit might be okay. Might not, depending on the blow and how it occurs. So, but the interesting thing is, like, a lot of furries were thinking, well, was this a targeted attack, or was this something or other? I think fursuits stand out, and I think that's to their strength and to their weakness sometimes. When that person was stumbling across, from what I could tell, they were kind of flailing. They were what they were calling crowd killing, which we'll describe in a moment. But basically, it did look like they were looking at the fursuiter on their main approach, right? So they wanted to get that fursuiter involved somehow, right? And so he started swinging. He kicked a random person who was looking at the stage, and then he punched the fursuiter in the face. And so, you know, and then got shoved away by another person in that part of the crowd, right? And so, you know, a lot of, you know, as you can see from the social media's initial interactions at around, you know, 5:15 in the afternoon Eastern time, you know, it was basically somewhat jovial. It's like, Furry got involved in a mosh pit, how cool, or how funny, or like things like that. But unfortunately, that took a turn after Latte, who is the fursuiter in question, basically let it be known at about 2 hours later from then that they were actually hospitalized and they actually took on some severe injuries from that. That is the unfortunate part of that. So she actually shared pictures of those injuries, and you can see those here. They took a blow to their left eye socket, and her eye, so you can see, is not aligned properly when rotating, right? So she has to basically, you know, she has that observed, and basically after the swelling goes down a little bit more from the initial blow, she says that she's going to be, her surgeon's going to be looking into trying to fix this particular injury. Hopefully, this is recovered, and hopefully she doesn't lose any sight or have any obstructions to her vision. And hopefully this can be a story, this incident can be a story under which she could look back and, you know, share the story of the scar, because she's going to have a scar on her left eye probably for the duration of this, but she'll have a story that she could show. It's like, here's what happened to me and stuff like that, because when you're part of a mosh pit, sometimes that happens, and sometimes obviously they want to take precautions and safety and things like that, but the experience of like being part of the crowd and being in there is kind of part of the things that if you take a major blow like that, you're going to get some major cred, right? I'm going to guess. It's like if you tell a fellow mosher, like, man, I took this blow to my left side of my face, and here's the video of it, and they're going, oh man, you took that blow, man, right? So there might be some, you know, respect for that. It's certainly going to be more respect than what came for the particular mosher who gave the blow, because it was, in essence, and this is sort of why I think this sort of brings good attention to the ethics and the sort of things of it. Because FromJoy retweeted, said, yeah, we're for the furries and things like that. But in essence, it kind of does ignore the context of the video, right? Like, is this an ethical thing to have occurred, that this random fursuiter standing out the peripherals of the mosh pit basically was hit that hard? So if this was a random person, like if this person wasn't wearing a furry costume, would the initial reaction have been the same? And I think it would have been different, because there's a thing where if somebody punches me in the face and I'm wearing this costume, the expression on this character's face is not going to change, right? The shock or things like that. And on top of that, you're not going to be able to see the internal damage. And those two factors, I think, made it so that this was sort of played off as a jovial sort of situation before it transformed into like a more serious and somber situation. And full credit to FromJoy, as soon as that, you know, the message started to spread, it's like, no, this furry actually took a lot of damage, and, you know, it was harmful. They were actually able to raise the money that they needed for their GoFundMe to kind of deal with these medical bills that are going to be upcoming from this incident. You know, the word got out, and, you know, moshers and furries probably helped raise money for Latte's condition and serious situation, and hopefully she recovers and that money helps her do that, and hopefully it doesn't impact her life too much beyond this point. For the person who gave the blow themselves, it sounds like at this time nobody knows who that person was. That person hasn't stepped forward. And so the mosh community has called that crowd killing, what his actions were. And it's a generally frowned upon situation. As you can see here in the highlighted thing on variations for Wikipedia, crowd killing is considered when a mosher moshes against the crowd around the sides of the pit, and basically not within the actual pit itself. And it is generally a frowned upon action. Now, when it comes to where the crowd begins and where the mosh pit ends, in particular ballroom situations, that can be probably sometimes tricky to address, but I think it's safe to say from the video, I believe that this mosher went well outside of where their moshing pit was. As I said, it was about 3 to 4 body lengths of empty floor space between the main mosh pit in the corner and what seemed to be a lower energy, lower key sort of ambient crowd, which the furry was sort of standing in. So I think that if you consider that empty space sort of a yellow zone, like in that part of the crowd, the red zone, as part of like feeling a crowd, you can kind of think that that was sort of a crowd killing action where the person's going and what they call killing the crowd. So killing is a verbiage that's used, at least from the mosh videos that I've seen of my one day of experience of research. Killing seems to be a word that is describing people in a mosh zone or being moshed, as it were. So basically, the red zone, I would say, is the kill zone, is the mosh pit. The yellow zone is sort of where it's a little outside the peripherals, and then the green zone would be like the crowd zone. And those zones can kind of flux and change with the crowd, unless like the mosh area probably has like is more distinguished by like barriers or things like that, which could happen in some venues probably. Depends on the things, but it's about reading the crowd, which reading the crowd is definitely a skill, being able to ebb and flow, and you deal with that in furry conventions a lot. It's particularly Midwest Fur Fest, which can get very crowded, like especially in the main foyer where you have furries stopping to take pictures and moving around, and like you sort of feel like there's a sort of traffic flow, ebb and flow that goes, and you kind of pay attention to things. When you're wearing a fursuit, you got to really like pan your space around you, understand who's stopping and talking versus who's moving and going. And if you're trying to move and go in a certain direction, you kind of follow the crowd in that way. So similarly, there's sort of a read to the crowd in a mosh pit situation, probably only at a more visceral extreme. It's about, even it seems anarchistic, right? From an outside perspective, that the means of the crowd. But when you're within the crowd, there actually seems to be like these sort of rules that you abide by. By the way, it's like I note that I'm not a mosher, but I read the next point here on the hip hop pit, and I'm like, this as a kangaroo, that sounds like some of my jam. It's like, so it says here, hip hop pits are generally less violent than those of the hardcore situations, but instead consist of a mass of people enthusiastically nudging each other while jumping in unison. I don't know, as a kangaroo, that sounds appealing. I don't know, like, yeah, that sounds like my kind of pit. Not this. This person, Latte, certainly was in a much harder core place than I'd ever find myself, for sure. Hopefully she recovers from that. Hopefully this ends off as just like a sort of a story, a cool story that she can share with people after this is all said and done, after she fully recovers, and that it actually isn't a sort of thing that she looks back with regret. And, that's the thing, is like, you should be respectful of your fellow moshers. Understand, and importantly, I think, understanding where these two things converge. Understand that fursuiters are in animal costumes, but those animal costumes don't they look soft and they look fluffy. They look like a stuffed animal that you could just like punch in the thing and it won't hurt. Like, it's like, oh man, look at this. It looks so soft. Like, it's so soft and punchable. He's got a soft and punchable face. Don't I? But know that when you actually do punch, that there's actually a human head behind here, right? And that this blow is going to push and cause damage internally. And from an outsider perspective, it may look like, oh man, like it didn't do that much damage, but you never know what's going on the inside, right? So be wary of if you see fursuiters at a mosh pit, be wary that you're punching them or doing. You'll give us a good body shove or stuff like that if we're in the mosh pit, if we're in, and do it if we're engaged, right? The video showed Latte was sort of like watching the stage. They weren't really engaged with the crowd, right? They weren't really paying attention, right? And so like the person throwing around the punches and stuff like that should have had self-awareness that this person isn't really paying attention. And by the way, like that is also another issue, which by the way we talk about in mainstream furries, is that the whole like peripheral vision, right? So when you're a human being, like you could see the eyes. Just because you can see the eyes doesn't mean the eyes can see you, right? And that's another sort of complication that can come from this. Just because I could turn over here. So I'm going to turn over this way, and I'm going to tell you when I don't see myself on the OBS software. Like basically when I don't see the computer screen. So I'm going to turn, right out of the peripheral, right about there. I cannot see myself on the screen anymore. At about here. So if you could see my eye though, clearly, right? So you think I see you. So if you're coming at me from this side when I'm faced like this, and you're coming at me right here, I don't see you. And that's an important thing to understand, is that the peripherals that I could see from a fursuit. So I'm going to face the camera again, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to put my hands up here, and to make it clear, I'm going to take the paws off so you can see my hands, so you can see more intricately what's going on. I'm going to show you about where I could see. So I'd say about here. Like I'm going to move my hand and tilt my hand so that I could see, so that I can't see my hand anymore, basically, and twist it. So move it like that, and right about there. So if I look down, you can see that's about my peripheral cone of vision. And by the way, there's a middle zone that I can't see, which is about right here, right? Straight on like here. So between those 2 points, right about here, I can't see person coming straight on. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I got booped, and you could, like that caused undue pressure on my nose, right? And if somebody really booped me really hard, I'd really be able to feel it on my nose, right? That person surprised me because they moved their hand like straight on into my face in that dead zone in the center, right? So it caught me off guard. Same thing probably happened here. So understanding that these things don't take blows, even though they look soft, they're not a stuffed animal, they can't take blows like normal things, and that there's peripheral issues. So make sure that the furry could see you, and make sure that they're engaged in the mosh, right? Same with a normal person, right? If a normal person's standing there watching the stage, and some random person's coming out swinging like at a 45, at a almost from straight behind them, they're not going to be able to see you. And so they're going to take that blow and not know that there's a person coming right at them, right? And this can also probably impact hearing a little bit, especially in a high crowd, high energy area. So like it impacts our ability to engage. So just be aware of that if you are a person who's trying to engage a fursuiter in a mosh pit, things like that. So that's an interesting topic that I didn't think I'd have to cover, but unfortunately, it always takes an incident to think, oh, maybe we should cover like how do we do furries in a mosh pit? Like how do you engage with furries in a mosh pit and understand that sort of the do's and the don'ts, as it were, as the fursuiter and as the people around the fursuitee in the mosh pit, right? Obviously, like the person took that risk, and by the way, she's been handling it very well. There's a full video, article by that metal rock and roll sort of news rag, similar to Flailing. I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head, but it's a very good article. It shows sort of the situation and things like that. It just shows how things. As things became more serious, that Killjoy, or From Joy, I'm gonna call it Killjoy. Killjoy does sound like a grunge band, doesn't it? But no, it's From Joy, not Killjoy. But From Joy basically, they, as soon as the seriousness of the situation is, they did shift gears. They didn't back down though. They didn't show that they didn't like undo the retweets or anything like that. They did like say, here, we did share this and we did show this information. And by the way, it made us more aware of this kind of thing. And awareness is important, right? It's important for us to be aware that this situation happened, the outcome of it, and thinking about the future of furry moshers and furry grunge hens wanting to get down in there in the pit. Your thing, not mine. I'll stay safe in my little cozy bubble home or whatever. I won't have any cool stories of like scars on my face. At least that I'm aware of. Not from a mosh pit anyway. But hopefully Latte recovers. And hopefully moshers and furries alike can take some lessons from it. So anyways, thank you guys for watching today. It was an interesting topic, and hopefully, I wish it was under better circumstances, but hopefully it is that we can look back on this, and hopefully Latte does a full recovery. The article does have a link to their contribution page if you want to. They have met their goal, but if you want to send a little thing their way, you may do so as well. Never hurts, especially if they do need a more intricate surgery. It's probably going to cost them more than they expect. So everyone have a good one, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks. I still got to change that thing. Stop being lazy and change it. Do it now. All right. Have a good one, guys.